Mm. A warm, warm welcome to each one of you, all the folks here in the room, all the folks who are online. It is always a treat. I say that every time, and I really mean it every time. It's always a treat to see your faces, to see you taking care of your lives in this way by practicing the Dhamma and coming together to explore what that really means for you. So here we are. It's Sunday morning, and you might have already noticed that I'm having some kind of something going on with my throat and my voice and my nose and my whole head and my whole body. So please bear with me, and please do just raise your hand or make some kind of signal if you can't hear me, because I can't really gauge the sound of my voice very well right now from the congestion. But I'm still very joyful, happy to be here with you, and we'll do our usual Sunday program, which is we'll have a guided meditation, and then after that, Dhamma talk for maybe about half an hour or so, and then plenty of time for comments, questions, reflections, and dedicating the merit at the end. So before I get started with the meditation, just to make a couple of announcements. Many of you are here because you already know that we're having a brunch this afternoon or this morning after the program ends. So even if you didn't know, you're welcome to stay for that. Folks who are here in the room or folks who are online but could be here. Um, Also, the registration is currently open for the Introduction to Buddhism class that's hosted by San Francisco Zen Center, and it starts in May. And it's what I call a whirlwind tour of 2,500 years of Buddhism across all the branches a little bit. If you're interested in learning about how the traditions evolved and some of like the key figures historically in Buddhism, that's what that class is for. Um, Also, save the date. So we have our Wesak picnic. And what is Wesak? Wesak is the celebration of the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and passing into Nibbana. And that usually happens on the full moon in May. This May, we happen to have two full moons. We have what's called a blue moon because there are two of them. So I chose the latter one. I chose May 31st as our day to get together in the hopes of some nice warm spring weather, because we're going to do a picnic. And it'll still be hybrid, so we'll still have an online component for folks who want to join us online. So Sunday, May 31st at the usual Sunday time. We'll do we'll talk a little bit about the incredible human being who discovered this way and shared it with so many people. Yeah. So, oh, and next weekend, of course, next weekend. So I will be out of town for 2 weekends in a row. Next weekend, dear Dharma friend, Ashley Messenger, uh, who's sitting right here, is going to offer a special workshop on how to skillfully practice with the media, with what you see on the news and the television and the social media and so on. So she should know about this because she works in that field, and also because she's been a long time a deep practitioner of the way. So I think that you guys will have a wonderful experience with her, and I'll watch the recording. That's what I'll be doing because I won't be here. And then the following weekend, there won't be a Sunday program. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find anybody who was available to do the Sunday program. So no Sunday on Sunday the 26th, I think it is. Sorry about that. But we'll be back the following week as usual. Okay, great. Um, all right, I think that's plenty of announcements for now. So this morning's meditation, we're going to explore the senses Really tune into the sense experience of this body and the role of the mind as a sense organ. This is always an interesting exploration. And but we don't want to jump ahead to that. Uh, so I'll give some guidance and we can begin by establishing an upright and balanced meditation posture. I find that oftentimes it helps to move the body a bit, to find that place where the bones can carry the weight of the body, allowing the muscles to relax and soften. Feeling the supports underneath you, the chair, the cushion, the bench, and really allowing the body to settle deeply right here. If you want to lower the energy of the body, you can place your hands flat on your thighs. Or if you want to gather together the energy, then you can bring your hands together in your lap. Right hand over left hand, and the thumb tips touching lightly. And moving the attention up to the chest and the ribs. And as best you can, releasing any tension there. Leaving plenty of room for the breath to just move according to its natural rhythms. And allowing the head to come into alignment with the spine. And softening the eyes. And softening the mouth. So nice to just be still and be present with this experience. Now turning the attention to one hand and just receiving the sensations of touch that are coming from the hand. Staying curious about the sensations of touch. And if you notice that you begin to feel sleepy or dull, just really refining that awareness, staying very close to those sensations. How is it right now? And each moment of sensation has its tone, either pleasant or neutral or unpleasant. Now shifting the awareness to the sensations of seeing, resting the attention, whether the eyes are closed or open, just resting the attention on any visual sensations. Noticing that there is no need to strain at all. Visual sensations are simply arising moment by moment and ceasing moment by moment. Now shifting the attention once more to allow attention to rest on sensations of hearing. Just receiving sensations of hearing. Are they neutral or unpleasant or pleasant? And now another shift of attention to study the mind as a sense organ, as a sense domain. So, how is it to receive thoughts, mental activity, as mere sensations in the mind, just like a sound, or a taste, or a touch? So, resting the attention on the sensations of mental activity in the mind. Not getting entangled in the meaning of the thoughts, but thoughts as phenomena. Beautiful. So that's our meditation for today's program. Feel free to repeat as needed. Yeah. And give me just a moment. I'm going to bring up the chant for us. Mm. So this is the homage to the Buddha as the Blessed One, the fully awakened one, the well awakened one. That's what Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa means. Honor to or honor, homage. And Buddham Dhammang Sanghang Namasami means I honor the what we call the triple gem, the Buddha as the historical person and as the quality of awakening, or you could say our human capacity for such a thing. Dhamma as the teachings about how that can happen, and the teachings as a description of reality, as a description of the truths of our lives. And Sangha as the community, the great, wide, diverse community of folks who are in some way on this path. We all make it possible for each other. So if everyone online, except for Claudia, can keep their mics muted, you're welcome to chant along. And everyone here in the room as well. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Oh. As I mentioned earlier, I'm having some discomfort in my body. I'm having maybe some allergies or some kind of something going on with my sinuses. I'm not sure. And what I noticed is that um, so I had like a sore throat and other things happening. What I noticed is that the awareness of the bodily experience was more in the forefront, particularly when it's very unpleasant. It was more in the forefront. And what I also noticed was that I very subtly would make choices to adjust to that. Like I noticed at one point that I was not swallowing as much, and so I would have more saliva in my mouth, and I would have to actually stop and think about swallowing. And that was because it hurt to do so. So I had kind of subtly made this choice, and then I would have to also more overtly make the choice, the next choice that goes with that, which is to continue to swallow. I'm not telling you this to concern all of you. I'm just reflecting on the observations for a moment because it was very interesting to see this kind of subtle layer of intention and then this more overt layer of intention showing up, but also this dynamic of what's in the forefront and what's a little bit more in the background of attention, right? So the other thing that I noticed is, and this is a bit of a disclaimer, I suppose, for today's talk, which is that the other thing that I noticed is that when this bodily sensation is more in the forefront, that I also have, it's also harder to organize the mental sensations. It's a little bit harder to keep the mental sensations organized in the fashion that I would, or to relate to them in a way that I typically would. And that was also fascinating to me to see that. But that means that if this talk is disorganized, then you know why, right? Okay. All right. Uh, but I want to focus specifically on these aspects of mindfulness of body, of the Vedana, the feeling tones of what we experience in the body. But before that, I want to say, sometimes people will tell me or tell others that what they really want is they want a practical Dhamma. They want a Dhamma that is about everyday life, that they could really apply to their everyday life. And when I hear that, I think, oh yeah, I understand that desire or that wish, right? Um, and in another way, it's a bit ironic, right? The Dhamma is by nature describing your life. That's why the Buddha said that by studying your life, you could actually unlock the truths of everything, because the Dhamma is right here in this life. So anything that is true about Dhamma must be true about life. Or the way to think about it is, if if we call something a universal truth, it means it's true about everything, including you. Right? So how would we see that? Is it possible to see universal truths? Are there universal truths? These are always good questions to ask, right? To explore for yourself. But I thought that today I would bring a talk about a Dhamma that's very, very clearly about everyday life, so that we could see both of these two dynamics, how the explicitly ordinary or mundane is also showing us something much greater. And it's a sutta. So what are the suttas? Suttas are said to be the discourses of the historical person called the Buddha. Buddha is his title. That's not his name. It's his title. It means the awakened one. Uh, he didn't call himself Buddha, except very rarely. I think there's one or two cases in the Pali discourses where he says that. Most of the time, he referred to himself as Tathagata, the one who comes like this, and the one who goes like this, like just as this is. But in any event, that's the Pali texts were written down many centuries after his life, but they are, I would think that most scholars would agree, the best records that we possibly have about him. And maybe the agamas would also be the Chinese agamas, which were actual translations, later translations, but because they were based on people's interactions with Indian monks and scholars, then sometimes they actually capture some more information as well. So we have a sutta called the Dona Pakka Sutta. And this is Samyutta Nikaya 313. That means it's from a grouping of discourses. So discourses, or, we wouldn't think of the Buddha as lecturing per se. He would like sit down and just start talking Dhamma, like this is how the world is, or this is something that I experienced, or, people would come up and ask him a question. And that's what we see in the so-called discourses. Uh, so this is from the collection called the Connected Discourses. And it's a story about King Pasenadi. King Pasenadi was a very, very devoted follower of the Buddha. He had various encounters that are recorded, many, many encounters with the Buddha that are recorded in the suttas, in the discourses. And the Buddha would teach anybody, slaves, kings, queens, merchants, farmers. He didn't really concern himself exactly with that aspect of it. Anybody who was interested in exploring the path was somebody he was willing to talk to. So some of the kings would come and speak to him. And King Pasenadi was the king of Kosala. That's the sort of clan that he was the head of. You can't think of them as kings exactly in the same way that we would think of them in later times. It was not that kind of organization. But we still use that word to mean the head of a group of people, as a person who had the authority or the power over a group of people in that part of the world at that time. So King Pasenadi was known to eat a dona of rice at his meal. And what is a dona? So a dona is actually, that's the Pali word. It means something like a trough of food. It was a measure of food that would be given to a horse. Or like even a bucket full. Like it was also considered to be like a month of rice, rice, enough for a month for a slave would be one dona of rice. But King Pasenadi would eat a dona of rice, a bucketful basically of rice at his meal. And he did that one day, and then he came to speak to the Buddha. And he says that he came and he was kind of huffing and puffing. He was all out of breath, right? So we imagine that King Pasenadi was of some substantial size from eating, a trough of rice at every meal for some period of time. And the Buddha sees this, and he gives him a verse without even, like, I think King Pasenadi hadn't even sat down yet. And the Buddha recites this teaching to him. So I'm going to give you Bhikkhu Bodhis, let's see now. Let me get my glasses on. And we'll read Bhante Sujata's translation, which is the one that Claudia has in front of her, I hope. Thank you to Claudia, as ever, for being our trusty interpreter. She has this tremendous skill of just live, real time translating the talks from English into Spanish, and she's doing that for our folks, our Spanish-speaking folks who are here with us each weekend. Yeah, hearts to that for sure, Emily. So the Buddha said, oh, he did actually get a chance to sit down. King Pasenadi get a chance to sit down. He bowed and sat down to one side, and then the Buddha said, when a person is always mindful, knowing moderation in eating, his discomfort fades and he ages slowly, taking care of his life. Now, Bhante Sujato put a little footnote at the beginning of this sutta and said, this is the first diet ever in the world. I think that's an exaggeration, frankly. That's definitely not the case, I would say, but it might be the first mindfulness diet in the world. Okay, maybe. Maybe. In any event, it's a very fascinating verse, and I'm going to go into it in a little more detail. But just to say that he says, when one is always mindful, then they will know moderation in eating, right? Those two things come together. The one who is always mindful, knowing moderation in eating. And I saw one of the reasons why I'm talking about this today is because I saw a commentary on this on Instagram. You know, I'm always commenting on the commentaries I see on Instagram. Not always favorably, but in this case, it was a pretty good one. And unfortunately, I didn't make note of the name of the person, but he was noting that what King Pasenadi does with this verse is that he turns to his attendant or slave or family member, whoever it was that was with him, Sudasa, was it? Mm, yeah, Sudasana. And says, memorize this verse and say it to me every time at the beginning of the meal. And then the sutta goes on, and it says that King Pasenadi did, in fact, hear the verse at the beginning of each meal and learn how to eat about a pint full of rice instead of a whole bucket full of rice at each meal. And he lost a lot of weight. And at that time, he was thankful. He said, the Buddha is good to me, is compassionate to me in this life and beyond this life. And in other words, he gives a teaching that's useful to me now as well as in the future. Mm-hmm. And the person who was commenting on this on Instagram said that it was about interrupting, that the reason why this worked for King Pasenadi was that he was able to interrupt his habit pattern of the mind by hearing this verse and then changing his behavior. And I would say, well, that's a good read of what he chose to do with that teaching, what King Pasenadi chose to do with that teaching by having somebody recite it back to him, right? So this kind of activity, we see it a lot, right? You have Eihei Dogen, who was the founder of Soto Zen, had a gata for when you brush your teeth, for when you wash your hands, for when you go to the toilet, for when you take a bath. You know, there was this kind of stopping and reminding yourself of the nature of activity as Dhamma, time and time again during the day. So that's one way to think about how to use this kind of a teaching. And there's no doubt that that is what Pasenadi chose to do by having somebody recite it for him at each meal. But if we look at the actual verse by the Buddha is saying that by being mindful, we can ourselves know moderation in eating. He doesn't say anything about interrupting or habits or tendencies. There are words for that in Pali. It's not that there aren't words for that, right? So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is really, you could say, a sort of gentle, receptive attention to phenomena in this moment with as little judgment as possible. Mindfulness doesn't actually discern the differences between things, for example. That's the purpose of investigation. But mindfulness itself is just this, right? Knowing this is what's here. This is the now. This, right? And so why would that help with moderation in eating? Well, what the Buddha is saying is that when you are attending mindfully to your embodied experience, then you will know, oh, look, I'm full. Or, oh, look, this next bite. Okay, just to be with that. And or oh, look, there's this tremendous greed, like I need to eat the whole bucket. But that just that observation gives you opens up that opportunity for choice. The choice to interrupt, the choice to continue, the choice to relate to it in a different way, the choice to even begin to study it further and understand what is the underlying mechanism of the mind that is at work here, that is creating this push, this incredible drive, right? So it's much more profound than just saying, take a break. Mhm. Because our mindfulness, our attention, our ability to know, to be present with the phenomena that are here is what makes it possible to practice with a thing. If you cannot be mindful of it, you can't practice with it because you're not even dealing with the thing. You're just dealing with your idea of it, right? Or even just glossing it over in your experience while you're busy thinking about Tahiti or something, right? So I give you an example of how profound this shift of mindfulness can be. And some of you have heard this story, so hopefully it will bring joy yet again. So many years ago, maybe it was like 2013 or so, I had moved from San Francisco Zen Center over to the Berkeley side of the Bay and was doing some chaplaincy there and practicing at Berkeley Zen Center. But I was also part of leading a class, a year-long class for lay folks, for folks who were not residents in either one of the San Francisco Zen Center temples or in the Berkeley Zen Center temple. That was led by 6 different teachers, myself and 5 other folks, including Paul Haller, who was the abbot at the time. And so we were doing this year-long class, and it was a big group of people, maybe, I don't know, 120 people or so. And so we also had these subgroups that would meet according to people's geography because, the Bay Area is very spread out. So I had a group of about 12 folks who were meeting with me in Berkeley in between the all group meetings of the class. So great. So it's a year-long course. And so the first month's homework was pay attention in the morning to which foot you put in your pants or your kilt or your skirt or your shorts or your, hula hoop or whatever it is that you're going to be wearing that day, your tutu. Pay attention to which foot you put in first. That's your homework. Basic mindfulness of body. We're not asking you to be mindful all day long, just this one moment of the day, right? But then what happens? So then month 2 comes along, and one of the young women who is in my group in the Berkeley group takes me aside. And now I can tell you this story because she later told this story publicly to everyone. So this is not me telling you about a private conversation. Actually, we had the private conversation and then she shared it publicly so that I can repeat it again. She takes me aside and she says, you know what? I still haven't seen which foot I put in my skirt every morning. We're on month 2 now. And she's a little frustrated about this, right? She's considers herself to be a competent person. She's got a responsible job. She's got a family. She's doing her thing. She's been practicing for years, I don't know. I think 6 years at that point, 4 or 5, 6 years. She's like, I still haven't seen my foot. In fact, I get to my car and I go, I didn't see which foot I put in my skirt this morning. So, okay, so we have a conversation about that, right? So what are some of the things you might think about if you're trying to be mindful of one particular moment? Well, one thing that's helpful is to be mindful in the moment before the moment you're trying to observe, right? So you might have a little note on your dresser where you get your skirt out that says, hey, pay attention to the foot, right? Or if you're rushing, you might try to slow down, right? She's busy. She's got things going on in the morning. There's all kinds of activity happening. And she's busy. She's not thinking, about her foot. So one suggestion is also maybe just try to organize your day a little bit differently and see if you could just slow down during those times. So okay, so she had some tools. She went away with some thoughts about how to do this. And then she came back and she said to me, guess what? I saw which foot I put in my skirt in the morning. And she was so excited and so happy about it. And I was like, that's great. And and I'm just for the sake of discussion, because I don't remember which foot it was, she says, yeah, I put my left foot in, but that's not the coolest thing. And I thought, wow. So I asked her, well, what's the coolest thing? And she says, well, I noticed that my little girl, so she had a 3-year-old girl, she said, I noticed that my little girl also puts her left foot in first every morning. Wow. How sweet is that, right? So not only did her mindfulness for just a moment in the morning open up another door to being able to observe the intimate folks around her in a new way, but also it might even bring a little bit less friction every morning, right? If you know that your daughter's tendency would be most likely to want the left leg of the pants first, then you give the left leg of the pants first, right? This tiny little bit of friction that can be alleviated just by being present with your own foot in the morning, right? It wasn't an exercise about which foot her daughter was putting in, but that door turned out to be opened for her because of her own awareness of herself, because of her own mindfulness opening up. That is the coolest, huh? Very cool. And that is, you could say, part of the function of mindfulness. That the function of mindfulness is something that enables us to encounter our lives in ways that are more awake and potentially more harmonious. Time and time and time again. In fact, there's also a beautiful sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. Is it in the Samyutta? Let's see, hold on. Yeah, Samyutta Nikaya 4653, which is the Agi Sutta, it's a sutta about fire sticks, of all the funny things. But in that sutta, what the Buddha says is, he talks about the 7 factors of awakening. So what are the 7 factors? Mindfulness is the first factor. Investigation is the second factor. Effort is the third. Joy is the fourth. Don't forget that one. Joy. Tranquility. Then samadhi, concentration or immersion, and equanimity. Those are the 7. Okay. So what the Buddha does in the Agi Sutta is that he basically says, when the mind is dull and sluggish, you don't try to focus on tranquility and concentration and equanimity, because those are the calming factors. What you need to do is you need to work on the factors that are more stimulating. So it's an interesting idea to even think that there are qualities, right, that are more stimulating or more calming. He says, okay, so work on the more stimulating factors, which are the investigation, the effort, and the joy. Those are stimulating factors, right? So if you sit down and you find that your mind is very dull or sleepy, then work on joy for a while. That seems like a nice way to work. Huh? Pleasant work to be done, right? Or you increase your effort a little bit, right? And that was what I was giving you a little bit of instruction in the meditation, that you kind of lean into, okay, have the attention stay very close to the phenomena that you're trying to observe, right? Not this kind of leaning back in your seat, but this kind of like curiosity. Oh, how is it? How is it? And investigation, that how is it can become this kind of discernment, right? Investigation is what is able to compare different kinds of phenomena that we become mindful of. Oh, right, this one is stimulating and this one is calming. How did the Buddha find that out? By investigation. Mm. But he says mindfulness, that first factor, and this is maybe why we hear so much about it, and you have magazines at the grocery store all about it. And mindfulness is always useful, no matter the state of the mind, whether the mind is sluggish or energized or beautifully balanced, mindfulness is always useful. And that's what King Pasenadi found out, right? That by being mindful, he was able to change this pattern of behavior, that the choice opened up for him in the same way that my friend's choice about which leg to give her daughter opened up suddenly when she was mindful of her daughter's behavior, right? So I want to close by saying that circling back to where I started, which is that the Dhamma is an everyday matter in the most profound way. It could not possibly be separate from your everyday life. In fact, I would suggest that when you practice mindfulness, the whole world is a teaching. Okay, friends. I think I still have some voice left for question and answer and comments and reflections. And we have a mic here for folks who are in the room and folks who are online. You can just wave your physical hand or raise your Zoom hand, whatever works for you. Mm. It's not as painful today as it was yesterday. Yep. No questions, no reflections. You guys are on it. You know what you need to do? Okay, Kylie.
Definitely don't have that. Um, I really appreciated the talk today and your personal reflections on how you're feeling and your relationship to it using your mindfulness. It really resonated. Um, And what I just wanted to say was just share something that I experienced myself that really surprised me in the last few months. That I've been, I have a back problem that arose, a very painful one, like more physical pain than I've ever had any time in my entire life, really. And just kind of ongoing and, really, really hard at first. And what I noticed is something really beautiful. Um, I think, I'm not sure, I don't really know, but the aversion to that physical experience, because my whole practice has mostly been in my body. I've always come back to my body as a place of refuge once I learned how to do that.
Mhm.
Um, it wasn't kind of really, it was a little too hard. So what I noticed was I was able to have a lot more comfort in awareness of the mind. And I just feel like wildly grateful for that because it feels like a whole new place of exploration. And I don't know if I would have discovered that without having had this other experience.
Mm, mm, mm. Wow. That's a great example, Kylie, of how the mindfulness opened up a different door for you, opened up a door of choice and investigation and knowing that you didn't have before.
Yeah,
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
you're
I
welcome.
hope you
Thanks for
feel
letting
better
me share.
soon.
Yeah, well, for sure. It's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hmm. Okay. Any other reflections or questions? Yes, Carolyn, please.
If nobody else is going, I always have something. I'm interested in Kylie's really bringing this up for me. I'm interested in this question of like, if they're all six senses, the mind is just one other sense, feeling out which one becomes dominant when seems like a really interesting practice to me. Um, Because I feel like there's something when, one sense is dominating, like, taste or mind, just spinning off the mind, becoming super absorbed in a taste. If that isn't when we're, you know, uh, out of balance, maybe,
Mm,
getting out of balance and just like watching the way one arises and kind of grabs you, and then another one comes up. I don't know if you would just talk to that as a practice. Um,
hmm. Did you have more? Sorry,
I
Helen.
hope that's not too abstract. Sorry if it
No,
is.
no,
Yeah.
no. I
Yeah.
mean, the what I hear in the reflection is a couple of things. One is you'll notice that in the meditation, we didn't actually take time to do all of the six sense fields, right? We didn't. So the six sense fields are seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, and the mind as the sixth one. So thinking or cognition, knowing as the sixth one. Um, it is, however, good to attend to each of them. I believe I have found it fruitful to attend to each of them in the meditation, in part because we all have tendencies of preferring one channel or another, right? You think of yourself as a visual person or an auditory person or a hands-on person, tactile, right? So So one way to work with that is to just observe whether that's true when you're actually placing your attention on the different aspects. You know, you're being thorough and you're actually encouraging the mind to become more and more equanimous about which channel is on at any given time, right? I'm going to learn how to, for example, pay attention to smell, even if smell is incredibly subtle and neutral for me, you know? I think that one of the things that people find oftentimes about doing the sense-based meditation is that when you encounter sense phenomena that is very neutral, that is something you want to go away from, something you want to slide over. The general tendency would be to ignore it. Why? Because it's not juicy enough. It doesn't give you enough to say, I like this or I don't like this, right? So the ego doesn't have a lot of foothold in the neutral Vedana. And that's why neutral Vedana is very important for us to become comfortable with, right? And concentration states, immersion states, are one of the ways that we train the mind to become more comfortable with neutral Vedana, neutral feeling tones, right? And ultimately, equanimity would enable even the most intense Vedanas, positive or negative, to not set you off balance, right? But until that kind of equanimity is developed, it's more like, right, we kind of ride the waves of intensity and we cling to them very strongly. The ones that we want, the ones that we don't want, right? That's also a form of clinging, that kind of aversion, rejection, no, get rid of it, right? So the key, I think, to what you're asking there, Carolyn, is something about the clinging, right? The intensity of the Vedana itself, uh, it can be just simply relinquished moment after moment after moment if there is enough equanimity there and there is enough non-clinging and non-identification with it. But generally, that's not the case. Generally, we have preferences around it. Right? So, and you know, is it worth getting into a battle with? I would say no, generally not. So this is another really important takeaway from if you're going to learn anything about the Dhamma of everyday life, it's that don't turn it into a battle with yourself, folks. That's not what we're aiming to do. On the contrary, what you're trying to do is to really find your harmony with the truth of what is, you know? And know what are the things that you can change and what are the things that you cannot change, and really try to be present with all that in a way that's compassionate. Yeah. So one of the things that I also learned along the years here is something about when you see your quote unquote mistakes, when you see your delusion, when you see your clinging, when you see your unethical behavior and so on. If you don't treat yourself kindly in those moments, you will simply start to turn away from them. You will stop seeing them altogether because it's just too painful. And the mind turns away from pain, right? We know that the mind wants to turn away from pain. So don't engage that mechanism. Try to be kind with yourself and say, oh, wow, what's the dynamic that's going on here? What's pushing me in that direction? And understand it from that standpoint. Because if you're harsh with yourself and you're at battle with yourself all the time, I mean it, you will just stop seeing those things. You will just turn away from them in your attention because your heart can't handle that kind of being at war with yourself all the time. That's not the Dhamma. It's not the Dhamma. And I'm not implying that that's what you were saying, Carolyn. I'm just riffing now on implications of how we deal with, what we see when we observe closely with mindfulness.
Mhm.
Yes, Brian.
Thanks as always for a great talk. And just noticed that This talk really hit me because I notice a tendency in myself to kind of prefer the, I don't know, kind of like loftier Dharma ideas like non-self and Nibbana and all this kind of stuff. And this just reminded me that, well, the kind of the nuts and bolts practice are all the time, and there's not as much speculation needed. And my question would be, when meditating on that sixth sense or the mind factor,
Mhm.
so you mentioned that mindfulness is non-judgmental, non-reactive, and so we're just kind of seeing thoughts appear and disappear. And then is it kind of post-meditation that the investigation factor goes online? So in other words, well, this thought kind of led to a insight, and this thought kind of led to more anger or something like that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And generally speaking, I would say no. Actually, you can be doing investigation during meditation. Um, there are, I think of, for example, the 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing. So, you're shifting your attention to different kinds of phenomena. So one thing is you need to be able to distinguish what's going on, right? How am I going to move the attention from this thing to that thing? And then you have these contemplations or investigations that are built in also at the end, right? This contemplation of impermanence, for example, or contemplation of dispassion, contemplation of cessation, contemplation of letting go. Those are the last four steps. So there are certain meditations where it's explicitly kind of built in, but even so, I would say that the our capacity for investigation, it kicks in pretty quickly oftentimes, right? If it's not, we're not just kind of flowing in the stream of stuff, we're actually having a look at the stuff that's there. And anytime we do that, then we've engaged some degree of investigation, right? But maybe tying in a little bit back to Carolyn's question and your question there, Brian. Um, when so the mind as a sense domain, or as the mind as a sense realm, is, you could say, there's one aspect of mind as a sense realm where mind is just knowing itself. Mind is just knowing thoughts, thoughts about thoughts, kind of thing, right? But mind is also involved. What you see, right? What you can observe when you start to observe the mind at that point, and you're allowing thoughts to just be like bubbles on a pond or like leaves on a stream. Um, what you may also notice, though, is that the sensations, all the other sensations, are known in the mind, right? The mind is involved in that point, those points of contact. It Consciousness is required for that. So in a sense, you could say mind as a sense field is also encompassing all the other ones. It's involved in all the ways that we know the senses, you know? So it is kind of the same mechanism, but a bigger batch of potential inputs. And I was trying to think about how to talk about this actually recently, and I was thinking of consciousness as like a drum, like the head of a drum, and different events are different things are coming toward our bodies or happening in our minds. It's like dropping pebbles on the head of a drum, right? It makes a sound. It does its response. It does its vibration. That's what consciousness does. So when we observe mind as a sense field, we get a chance to see that in action, so to speak, if we can not get too caught up in the content.
Nice. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. But yeah, just seeing which foot went in the skirt was plenty of new information, right? Yes, Kemananda.
Eh, eh, Atado a lo que decía Brian, la diferencia entre investigación y vipassana puede ser esto de cuando uno pregunta, ¿qué es esto?
Mm,
Está la mente observando, atenta,
mm,
y surge, ¿y esto qué es?
mm.
Eso ya es vipassana, no es investigación.
Mm, Vipassana. Ok, déjame contestar en inglés para que los demás puedan
Sí,
entender.
claro, yo te entiendo. Sí,
Ok, gracias, Kemananda. Um, so Kemananda is asking about the difference between Vipassana, which is a Pali word that we usually translate as insight, and investigation, which is Vichaya. Dhamma Vichaya in particular is the investigation of Dhammas, is the second factor of awakening that we're talking about here. So so it's different. So you could say Vipassana practice is engaging investigation as a tool. And we investigate various different types of phenomena and come to know how kind of what the mechanism or the machine, the form of how they arise and how they are known happens, the similarities among them, which is different than the other side of the coin in terms of concentration, where we're just looking at one kind of phenomena time and time again, right? So that's why we usually divide up types of meditation, conceptually divide up types of meditation into vipassana style, insight style, or concentration, samadhi. Yeah. So, but so technically speaking, Vipassana is saying Vipassana style meditation, this kind of style of meditation where you're looking at different phenomena and finding the similarities across those phenomena. That is insight, right? When you see, yes, this is how this works, that's Vipassana. And the way that that happens, though, the tool that you use for that, one of the tools, because you need all seven, but one of the tools is investigation, right? So when you're saying, what is this or how does this work? That's the investigation piece. And when it unlocks something, some kind of understanding or some kind of new observation, that's Vipassana. That's what we would technically call Vipassana. Yeah.
perfecto, gracias, maestra.
Gracias. Okay, folks. Maybe time for one more reflection or question. Yes, Lisa.
Hi. Um, yes, I think I solved a year-long mystery about my being fatigued. I've been to the doctor, I've had blood work done, and the iron levels are okay, the vitamin D is okay. And even it got to the point to where, oh, you're tired because you're old. You're old. My daughter, who's under 30, has to hear that she isn't sick because she's too young. And everything that happens to me now has to be because I'm old. If my
Mm.
if my arm is hurting, I'm old. So, but I've been studying the body lately. That's what I've been doing over the last like 2 or 3 weeks. And it hit me yesterday. I have a high sugar. I I eat and drink a lot of sugar, and I didn't realize it. In investigating the body and trying to figure out what this fatigue is, I mean, I have Coca-Colas every day, maybe two. I have to have my brownie and my cookie at night, and then I sleep on that, with that sugar on my body. And I think that's what it is. I looked it up. I sugar and fatigue go hand in hand. So, um, but in doing this investigating of the body, I think I've come to that. Hopefully, I mean that's what it is. I'm going to try to reduce the sugar because yes, I have I a lot of sugar and I didn't realize it.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so But yeah, it's kind of funny. She's hearing one thing under the age of 30, and I'm hearing another thing above the age of 50. So I guess between the age of 30 and 50, you can get some health care between those ages. But
Oh, Lisa, I hear you. I hear you.
thank you,
Yeah,
though. Thank you so much
yeah.
for the meditation and talk.
No, thank you for the reflection. And yeah, I really appreciate that. Now you have given yourself some homework, right? Now you have given yourself that choice, right? You said, "Oh, I've observed something. I think this might be how it works. I can make a choice and I can see, oh, does it work this way or not this way? If I change this or that, how does it work?" And that's beautiful. That's totally, where the rubber meets the road right there.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, wonderful, Lisa. Thank you. Okay, so Joso and Dana, it's your turn. Dana, you're still muted. Dana, your mic is muted, so we're not hearing you. She's there. Yeah, you're still muted. She's right there.
Okay. Apologies. It was not clicking. It was being tired.
Okay. Maybe it's over 50.
It definitely is. Giving to Dassanaya Buddhist Community supports Dhammadīpā, our guiding teacher, the physical location at the vihara, and allows us to continue to offer Buddhist teachings in support of the awakening of all beings. Our support pages are on the website under the support tab, donate, volunteer, or offer materials. In addition, we have a wonderful social group on WhatsApp now, and Joseph's going to throw all these good links into the chat, and I wish you a bonne journée, as they say here. Good rest of your day.
Okay. You too, Dana. Lovely. Thank you. So dedicating the beautiful, beneficial karmic momentum and karmic results of our practice here today, that we and all beings might know true clarity, and we and all beings might know ourselves as wisdom, ourselves as Dhammas. And by the power of the Buddhas, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and each one's efforts, may all beings be liberated from every form of suffering and delusion. Okay, dear friends, good to see you. Take good care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.